Hey, how's it going guys? My name's Daniel, aka HashLips, and welcome back to my channel, where we are going to take a look at how we can token gate a website. So, like I said, today we're going to see how we can token gate a website only showing content to individuals who own our NFTs. We'll be doing this by using thirdweb's auth product. This is a great product and you can use it for multiple chains. In our case, we are going to use it for Solana. The reason is because this video is a part 2 to a video in our thirdweb with HashLips series. Right here at the bottom, create a Solana NFT drop. This video over here, you will need to watch before this one if you want to follow along. Just a recap on what we did in the earlier video. In the video before this one, we've managed to create a phantom wallet and an NFT drop using the thirdweb's dashboard. And we ended up with something like this. We then used thirdweb's Solana starter template with Next.js and created this application. If we type in yarn dev to just run it quickly, we can see that the application looks like this, where a user can connect and disconnect with their wallet. And they can also claim an NFT. So this is exactly where we left off the last time, and this time in this video we are going to add the login functionality using thirdweb's auth. The end goal would be for us to have a login button which will check if the user is who they say they are, and then do a check to see if they have this relevant NFT. If these checks pass, then we know that we can show the data to this person, and then we can make some API call or whatever we want to do to display some data to the user. The thirdweb also has a great tutorial article which you can follow and copy some of the commands that I'm going to copy and paste in so that you don't misspell or mistype anything. I'll leave a link to this in the description of this video. Alright, so first things first is this is where we left off and it looks a bit ugly, so let's go ahead and restructure the page first before we get into the authentication stuff. From the previous video, this is exactly where we left off, and here is our page. So this is where we'll start doing some tweaks. So the first thing that I'm going to do is change the index.tsx page into the login page. So let's go ahead and rename this index.tsx into login. And then let's go ahead and change the component's name to be login as well. And we need to go and export login at the bottom. The reason why we're changing the index page into the login page is because most of our logic is here. But also, I would like people to claim an NFT if they're not able to access the page, right? Maybe they want to become a member, so we have most of our logic here. And by doing this, what I then need to do is maybe let's change this home.modules into login.modules. And then in the styles, we'll rename this to login.modules.css. And then I'm going to get rid of all these styles and replace it with my own. We'll add the styles as we go. So let's go back to our page. And here in the return statement, let's turn this into a div, this fragment. And at the bottom as well, let's remember to add the closing div. And then we're going to give it our own style. So the class name is going to be styles dot, let's call it page. Now we need to make a page class. In the styles, let's add page. For our page styles, we'll add some padding, maybe 16 pixels. Then we need to specify that this is going to be display flex, and we'll do flex direction should be column. For our height, we'll make it 100 vertical height, and for the width, we'll just do 100%. Okay, that's it. Let's also go into the global styles. And up here we see body. I'm going to remove this because it's creating weird scroller action. So we just want to work with our login styles. Now let's go ahead and open up the browser As we can see, we refresh and it says page not found. That is because we don't have an index.tsx file anymore. Instead, we have this login page. So when we click on login, this is our page. Now we can see that that scroller bar ugliness is away, and we can see our 16 pixel padding around the div. Now let's go and spread this connect button all the way here on the right. We can do this by adding another class, and let's call it header. We'll make a display flex, and then just justify content flex end. If we go back, we can now put our wallet. Let's cut that out there. Let's create a new div, place it in there, and let's just copy this, put a class name, and this will be header. And then let's just go to the globals, and on this body we need to remove the flex, otherwise it won't span all the way to the outside. So there we go. So now this thing is far on the right, this connect button, beautiful. And if we inspect, we can see that it does scale nicely. Now we do need some padding over there, so let's go and add the rest of the styles and maybe give it a different button style as well. In the login CSS file, I'm going to add a style and call this button, BTN for short. And then the color will be this blue violet for the background. For the color of the text, we'll make that white. Maybe we can even get the text a bold weight. We're going to add some kind of padding. And the padding, maybe 16 pixels again, will stay consistent over there. For the border, we'll just say none. And border radius, maybe a 5 pixels. We are then going to add a pseudo style. So we're going to say .btn class. And whenever this is active, meaning whenever we are clicking the button, what should happen? I'm just going to basically select this blue violet again and change it to a darker tone. Perfect. And then I'm going to copy this button, paste it over here at the bottom, and call this dis, and change this to gray. We'll use this style for whenever our button is disabled. That's about it for our styles. So now we're going to go to the login.tsx file. And like we said before, we need some kind of space between that header and the content. So I'm just going to add a line break. I can now get rid of this container class because it's not there anymore, as well as this div that wraps our image. It's not really needed. So this is what we have so far. Let's go and double check the outcome. All right, so we do have a tiny little bit of a space there, which is fine for now. And everything looks good. We need to add our button style now. So let's go to the button, and in here, let's give it a class name. And this will be styles.btn. Save it, go back. And now we can see we have this nice purple looking button as well. The next thing that I'm going to do is actually remove this p tag with the metadata is loading. We are not really going to use this at the moment, so I'm going to get rid of these consoles and get rid of this use program. Instead, what I want to add is this public key, and then make sure that I import the use wallet up here. The reason why we want to use this public key object that we extract is it will give us a way to know if a wallet is connected or not. So this is why I want to use this, because if it's null, then we get to hide some of the functionality and buttons. Let me show you what I mean. After our heading, what I'm going to ask is if there is no public key, we ask the question, then we want to return connect your wallet. Else, we're going to basically return all of this. So I'm going to make a fragment, and then right here at the end, put this fragment and close this off. So essentially now if there's no wallet, we shouldn't be able to see the button at all. let's go and verify that. If we disconnect, it says connect your wallet. And if we connect, now we get to see the claim button. But we also want to be able to see a login button because we need to do some authentication at some point. Let's go ahead and add this button. I'm going to add it above our other button, the claim button. I'll add another div set, this piece of code over here, which is basically a div that wraps a button and a paragraph. The button simply doesn't do anything for now. It just has a empty on-click handler, and the p tag says you can only log in if you own an NFT. So let's go ahead and save this. And now we have a login button as well. So we can't see these buttons if we don't have our wallet connected, because that's the very first step. We need to have an address because when we log in, we need the user to sign a message. So now I feel like we've got everything set up in place to start our authentication. So in order to use the thirdweb's auth product, let's go to products, auth, click on get started, and then on the left-hand side, we can click on Solana. Now, keep in mind, this is available for Ethereum as well and various chains, but this is the Solana guide that we can follow. Now, let's go ahead and copy this command, npm install. I'm going to go back to my code, exit the execution by pressing Control C, and then we are going to paste this command. Click enter, and then it should install the packages. If we now go ahead and go to the package.json file, we can verify that we do have the auth package installed. Okay, so now what is next? Let's go down and see the next steps. All right, so next we need to set up a .env.local file, and okay, now we are paying attention. You need to get your private key. Now listen, I need to tell you this, and you need to be very careful whenever you work with your personal private keys. I always recommend starting a new wallet for a project and all that just to be extra secure. The reason thirdweb needs this private key is so that the auth mechanism can generate messages that the user needs to sign. Now, that is all well and good, but like I said, there are better ways of doing this, and thirdweb lets us know. You can go to this article over here, which I'll leave in the description as well, and you can actually use this alternative if you don't want to expose your private key simply by having it in the environmental variables only. For the brevity of this tutorial, I am going to paste a private key in the env file. And that is because in Web 2, we are used to doing this with API keys and secure data, because env files, especially if you don't commit them and show them to the world on source control, they don't become part of the source code of an application running. It is mostly part of the operating system that runs that application or that server. So in some way, it's secure enough for Web 2 things, but again, as you can see from this message, when it comes to Web 3 private keys, best be safe and do it the secure way. So you can follow the recommended way over there. So let's continue and just do this so you can see actually how the auth mechanism works. So let's go ahead and create a .env.local file. In our code, right click, new file, .env.local. Now you'll see that it's grayed out, and that's because it's part of git ignore over here. Make sure that it is grayed out if you are going to do this and follow along this tutorial. Okay, here's the .env.local file, and now we need to put this value in here. Perfect. Thirdweb auth private key, and now we need to get our private key and replace it. To get my private key, what I can do is go to the Phantom extension, and in here I can click on my profile, security and privacy, and then export private key. Now I need to enter my password, and I'm not going to show my private key, but this is it, and I can go ahead and copy that. Then I can go back to our code and paste this without quotations. Make sure that you save this file And then I'm going to close this because I don't want to expose my private key as well. Although this is a wallet that I just created, it is good practice so that you also are aware of how sensitive that data is. Okay, so now for the next step, let's go ahead and create a file right in our root. And this file I'm going to call auth.config.ts. Here is where we're going to define a handler function that's going to handle auth requests coming into the application. Defining the handler would look like this. We need to first import the thirdweb auth from Solana, and then we use it like so. This function takes in the private key and a domain. The private key we get from our process.env. The thirdweb auth private key, remember that we kept that as our secret. And then for the second argument, we pass the domain. Now, this can be any domain, but it should be the same as your domain. So in my case, I'm going to make it my eyesnft.com or whatever your domain is. The sign message that a user is going to be signing, at the top, it's going to ask if this is the exact same domain that you are signing this message for. So that's why this name is here, for users to just identify the signature. You might ask, what is this signature that I'm talking about? Well, these functions allow thirdweb to work its magic, creating a signature to prove that a user is who he or she says they are. If we look at how this auth handler works, is that it gets to provide us a login endpoint, which will set a JWT token, a Web2 standard of authentication, for a user. It can get the user and even log a user out. And the getUser function gives us a method that we can query to detect if a user is authenticated or not. And then once we know that a user is authenticated, we can go ahead and ask questions like, do they actually own some of our NFTs? And show them some content. So how do we now expose the endpoints so that these auth handlers can be reached? Well, in the pages folder, we can create a new folder and call it API, and then a new folder in there called auth. And then we'll create a file. And the file structure is going to look like this. The brackets ... and thirdweb.ts is a file structure that is a catch-all. So any endpoint after auth / something is going to be handled here. So what I'm going to add is I'm simply going to import this configuration from our auth file that we have added here. And we're going to export this. Now that we know that those endpoints will have access to the auth handler, what we can do is in the _app.tsx file, here on the thirdweb provider, we're going to add this piece of configuration. This is the auth config, and it has a auth URL, which we have created, API, auth, the domain, and we need to make this domain the same as this one. So I'm just going to copy that, make this, and this is .com, and a login redirect. What's happening here is as soon as we load the application and we're trying to access a path, we're going to go through this auth, and this is going to check if we are allowed to go to the / domain. And if we are a valid user and we do have the require NFTs that we are going to check for, this will then allow us to go to this path. So currently, if we try and run dev again, just spinning up our application and go to the application, we should see that still that page is not found. And this is the very page that we are trying to direct to, right? So let's go ahead and create that page so that we at least have the page, and this will be the content page that we only want NFT holders to see. Let's go and create that. In pages, create a new file and call this index.tsx. Then go and paste this little boilerplate code, which basically just has a function and we call it protected. It just makes it clear that this is a protected function, but you can call it anything you like. And we also need these imports, especially the get server-side props. Get server-side props is a special function that we're going to add here at the bottom, and this allows us to run some checks before we even render this page. Currently, if we just save this and go to our application, we can see that this is our protected page, and you have access to this page, although we still need to do these checks, right? Because anyone can really load this up right now. What we do want to happen is if we go to our login page and we click on login, that this will take us to our protected page only if we are allowed to. So let's go and put in those checks to verify if we are allowed to see the content on this page. In the index.tsx file, below this function, we are going to add another function called getServerSideProps, which is a special Next.js function and runs before this is even executed. Very, very cool. Once we get some props back from an API or some data back, we put it in the props object and we can extract this here at the top. So I'm going to say props is type of any, and I'm going to return some data after I am sure that this user does have some of my NFTs. Inside the getUserProps function, I'm going to define a user, and this is going to be equal to await the get user up here that we've now imported, and we pass in the request that we get. Then this should return to us a user, but the possibility of a user not being there is good, so we need to check for that. So I'm going to check if there's no user. What should we do? Well, we should definitely return something, and what we are going to return is a redirect. We're basically going to set the destination as the login page, because if there's no user, we want them to log in first. Now let's see what we can add if there is a user. We can ask some more questions. Now I've added this because we will be typing for a very long time. This is the piece of code that I've added, and feel free to add it yourself as well. We instantiate the SDK first using the import from the dev network. Then we wait for an instance of our drop, passing in the address. Then we get all the NFTs that's been claimed. Then we define a hasNFT variable, testing and filtering out to see if this address of ours owns some of these NFTs. And if we do, it's just simply going to carry on. If we don't, it's going to return again to login. So this is essentially what makes sure that the person owns some of our NFTs. If that passes as well, we get to this bottom section, and this I've just emulated some data. But you can choose your own secret API that you want to get some data from. I simply am passing a message, and I'm actually going to push through the user and this data as well. I get the user from this const up here. Just to iterate one last time, the getServerSideProps function will run. We make sure that there is a user, otherwise we go to login. Then we connect to the SDK, the program, and we make sure that this user has some NFTs. If they don't, then we're going to go to login yet again. Else it's going to be successful, and we're going to pass a data message with a user through. Now you can pass any sort of data, API calls, whatever you need to. This props can then be caught by this function over here. So as an example, I can basically say my user is going to be equal to the props.user.address, because we can extract that from there. And we can simply also display our props.data.message. Okay, so now this page is done. Okay, so the last piece of the puzzle is on the login.tsx file. What we need to do is we already have this login button, but it's not calling anything. So we need that login functionality. Now we can actually get that login function by using the hook use login. This comes from the React SDK for Solana, and we can use this login function now instead of calling this empty handler like there. Okay, and we just need to make sure that we do import the use login hook, and we can get rid of that one because we're not using it anymore. And now our application should be complete. If we go to the browser and we try and go directly to that link, so as you can see, we take login out, we're trying to go to the index page, it redirects us to the login page. Also, if we disconnect, we can't see our buttons, so we have to be connected with our wallet. And if we try and click on login, now keep in mind, if I go to my Phantom wallet, and let me just log into my Phantom wallet, if I go to my NFT section, I should be able to see the 2 NFTs that I already own. Here they are. So I should technically be able to go and click on login. When I do, it asks me to sign this message. I can then simply say approve. And now something is busy loading here at the top. You can see it there. But once it's done loading, it has done its checks and I should see the data. And there we go. I'm able to see the hidden data We Love NFTs message in this page. And if someone doesn't own an NFT, they won't be able to access this page. Let me illustrate this by going back to login. And this time, I'm going to switch my wallet to this wallet too. There we can see I'm now connected to this wallet. And if I try and click on login, it's going to ask me to sign. And the browser is rendering or trying to redirect, but it will fail. And as you can see, we stay on this page. That is because I don't have an NFT. But let me see if I now mint one of these NFTs and then log in, if it will allow me. So with my brand new account, I'm going to click on claim NFT, and then this should pop up and we should just be able to claim one. There we go. I'm going to approve it. And then we should see, 4 out of the 5 NFTs have been minted over here, and it is. So now if I click on login and I sign, I can see again the browser is loading, and you can display some kind of loading, screen here as well as it's processing. And there we go. And that is how you do a token-gated website with thirdweb's auth. Now, I really hope that you have enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you did. And also, remember to give me a thumbs up if you want to see more content like this. As always, I hope to see you in the next videos and have a fantastic day. Cheers for now.